need a
Is everybody ready? Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order for the Planning Commission, February 28th, 2022 at 6 o'clock. If everyone will stand, we will go ahead and do our Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Yeager,
Here.
Commissioner Agner,
Here.
Commissioner McGann here, Commissioner Engelke,
Here?
Commissioner Mercer,
Here.
Commissioner Little,
Here.
Commissioner Stokes, Commissioner Stokes,
Not here.
Commissioner Vidal.
Here.
Okay, we have 7 present, 1 absent.
Thank you very much. And with that, I do want to welcome our newest planning commissioners, Mr. William Egner and Mr. William Mercer. I'm going to give this just a chance for William just to kind of do a short, William Egner to do a short introduction.
My name is William Egner. I live in Ward 5. I was appointed by the Alderman at Large as a replacement for his original choice, who had to opt out due to some personal reasons. I've lived in Horn Lake for about 11 years, and I'm very happy to be here. I hope to do the very best I can for the city.
Thank you. And Mr. Mercer.
Excuse me. My name is William Mercer. I'm replacing or helping out on Ward 4. I'm retired. I retired from Federal Express in 2001. I'm 86 years old, if anybody wants to know. I used to be on the commission back in 2010 through 19, I believe it was. And does anybody have any questions or anything they want to know about me, just ask me and I'll tell you, or tell it's none of your business. But I'm glad I'm here. Thank you.
Well, thank you both. All right, so now it's time for, if y'all have reviewed the minutes, once y'all have reviewed it, I just need a motion for approval.
A long 1 minute. I did a half. Oh, this I add a change.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from January 31st, 2022.
Do we have a second?
We need to fix that.
I second.
We need to
All right.
change the 7 to 6 p.m.
Any discussion?
Bring that up.
All right, roll call, please.
1 sec.
Yes.
We need to change 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. on page 2. That's it.
Is that all?
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
all I saw.
Okay, tell me.
With that one noted change,
All
any
that I
other,
saw.
any other,
But I
any
like to
other,
read it. I was trying to go through, yeah.
all right, can we have roll call?
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Agner,
Aye.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Engelke,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Stokes, and Commissioner Vidal.
Yes.
All right, next we'll move on to old business, case number 2062, a request from Julia Wooten for conditional use for an indoor auto showroom land use at 1909 Tappan Drive. I'll turn this over to our planning director, Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening to the public in attendance and watching at home or wherever they might be watching tonight. Yeah, on this particular case, it's kind of a repeat from the previous month where the person was not able to post their sign in due time. I actually don't think they've posted at all. So they haven't met the requirement that we have in the application for doing that in a certain amount of time. It's like 15 days prior to the Planning Commission meeting. So I just basically asked that it would be tabled to yet a future meeting, and hopefully they could meet that requirement for the next meeting.
All right, so based on the recommendation from, because they haven't met the requirement yet, do we have a motion to table this for a future meeting?
I motion to table.
Second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager, excuse me.
Yes.
Commissioner Agner,
Aye.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Engelke,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercer.
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal.
Yes.
All right, so now we'll move on to the next new business. Case number 2064 is a request by McDonald's USA LLC for a site plan and design review with the engineer for a restaurant located at 4170 Fountain Lane, consisting of 4,746 square feet inside the fountains of Fairfield Meadows Planned Unit Development, Section 8, Lot 1, subdivision in Horn Lake. I will turn this over to our planning director, Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as you've stated, this is a site plan design review request for McDonald's Restaurant on the west side of town, specifically that 4170 Fountain Lane address. Next slide, please. So what we've got here is what we've seen before from previous cases. This is from Article 13 of the city's zoning ordinance. It has to do with architectural standards. It's basically stating its purpose, has some specificity there. I won't bore everyone by reading them or anything like that, but just showing you part of the reason we have the meeting or this particular case is because of the wording that's seen on that particular slide. Next slide. So we start out here on this case. And what I do is when I build these PowerPoints, I try to build them basically from the bare bones, if you will, of the staff reports themselves. So I break them into three parts. When it's a site plan design review, we have architectural standards, we have the site plan itself, and then we have landscaping standards. I try to break them into those three parts. So here we start with the architectural design standards. The wording in the zoning ordinance, this particular one, this number one here has to do with dumpster enclosures. They are providing that. The standard in the zoning ordinance is an 8-foot maximum height. Now the standard they're actually showing for the enclosure, they're at that, but they also have the building next to it, which kind of services, if you will, the dumpster area. When you add its height and its roof, it comes to a height more than 8 feet. So I wasn't sure how particular the Planning Commission has been in the past. It's 8 foot actually on the dumpster screening, but the little building next to it is more than that. I didn't know if that was of issue or not, or if that was technically outside the 8-foot height maximum. So that's why those two particular items are on this slide here. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. Thank you. So on this one, the requirement for the smaller type commercial building, when I mean smaller, I believe it's around, I think it's 12,000 square feet in the city design standards, is that for the smaller buildings such as this, it would have actually a pitched roof. And what we see here is a roof that's flat. And so that's something that's of note here. It's a proposed flat roof for item 3. Item number 4, I'm trying to highlight them in the screen there, is about the building design. The issue here is the proposed reveal metal wall panel system with the color coming in as a weathered zinc. And so that's on that particular facade, that west facade. You see that on basically like the upper half of that facade there. I've tried to point that out, so that's an issue. Okay, moving on. Thank you. So those really were the only two items of note, or excuse me, the four items of note as far as the design of the building in reference to the city standards. Here we move on to the site plan review. And so here we have more specificity on some of the specifics from the city's zoning ordinance about site plan. Next slide. I do want to state here, this is from Article 5, Item N, from the zoning ordinance. It's under item number 4, and then it's numbered again underneath that. It's number 6. It's the effective period for a site plan approval. If the Planning Commission approves of the site plan tonight, including any conditions that may be a part of the record, that shall be effective for 1 year. There is an option for an applicant to ask for an extension at a later date, but it's good basically for a year. Next slide. So on this particular slide, we have 3 items of note. The first one is the number of parking spaces, and you'll see from your staff report, I put like 3 different renditions. Kind of depends on who was counting them, and they will all come up with a slightly different number as far as how to allocate things. 58 spaces are required, but there's 32 ranging to 53 provided, depending on who was counting or whatever. Now, for me, for my DoorDash days, I actually DoorDashed for a year prior to a couple of positions or whatever. I know that, obviously in the COVID era, and I'm assuming it's going to continue, that people have gotten used to just going through the drive-through exclusively. So what I did is I actually counted. They have a double lane, and then it melds into one there on the north side of the building, and then it comes around. When you actually demarcate or measure out the length, like say a 20-foot length, which would be kind of like a standard parking lot space length, it actually provides several spots there. So the requirement in the zoning is just basically 10 spaces for queuing. That's what it's called in the drive-through area. It's called queuing. And so when I add the ones that are in this parking lot itself and then the queuing space, I'd come up with a number, I think of 53. So they were just short of by 5. So that's item number 1. Item number 2 deals with off-street loading. The zoning ordinance requires for a building of this size to be provide for 1 space that would be designated for off-street loading. Now, I don't know if you remember from the Wendy site, which is 2 sites to the east of this one, they were mainly going to take their deliveries when the store was closed. And so it was the alderman actually at that. It was during, I think, the platting stage or one of the cases, they had actually accepted out the standard for providing an off-street loading space for taking deliveries. But that would be a conversation because I think there's 3 representatives from McDonald's or the company that's handling the case for McDonald's tonight. They're online. They could not make it here tonight. Their flight was canceled, but they are online. So that'd be a discussion or a question for them. Item number 3 is the traffic impact analysis. It would be nice to know if that study has been done by the applicant, or if they had any numbers that could give any type of clarity as far as the traffic in and out of the site. To give some historical background, McDonald's has approached the city in the past at the same site and actually got approval, but then going through the development process through MDOT, MDOT didn't like what was proposed then was a really northwest corner location for the main entry point to this site. And so that's why you see that they've come back and they've redesigned it. And you see the 2 entry points down in the southwest corner and then the southeast corner on this one. So it's been redesigned to accommodate the MDOT requirements. Next slide. So now moving on to the third portion, which has to do with landscaping and screening. So that's a part of the city's design review. because you're basically operating, even though you're the planning commission, you're operating as the design review committee. So you're like wearing multiple hats, if you will. Next slide. We'll make sure my paper and my slides match here. Okay, here we go. Thank you. For number 1 here, this has to do with landscaping and screening. Streetscape type A is designated for both the south and west sides of the property, which requires a 20-foot width of landscaped area on these 2 sides. Only 5 feet of width is proposed for the site plan on the west side and about 6.5 feet on the south. The plantings seem to be fine as meeting the standards by the city. So the planting portion, it was just the width that was narrow there. In a way that the space is constrained for space. We'll see that like on the next slide as well. And we see that coming out on the west side and on the south side. Now, to the applicant's credit, they didn't have to really landscape if they wanted to just do sodding or something like that on the east side, but to their credit, they are planning on planting trees and bushes and shrubs and stuff along the east side. Next slide. Thank you. So number 2 here, this has to do with streetscape type B, which is on the north side of the property. In this case, it requires a 25-foot of width for a landscaped area. Only 3.2 feet of width is proposed for the site plan. Plus, major shade trees are required every 80 feet, but none are proposed. They're proposing mostly what they call is the dwarf Burford hollies. Plus, also if you get into the minutia or whatever, they do have a label on here. It says a 20-foot width landscape buffer is labeled on the north side, and it says it's from DeSoto County. So I think that's something that needs to be deleted from their requirement, or excuse me, from their submittal. Okay, next slide. For number 3, this has to do with landscaping and screening as well, but more specifically, parking lot landscaping. The standard is parking lot landscaping shall be provided at a ratio of 300 square feet of green space, including 1 shade tree for every 10 parking spaces or increments thereof. And then no parking space should be located farther than 50 feet from a landscaped area, and no landscaped area shall be permitted to contain less than 200 square feet of green space. For what is proposed, some landscape islands are proposed on the south side, but are lacking on the west and the east. Both of those, and what I've tried to do with this, on that west side, I've tried to number, they've got 12 parking spaces. So after the 10th, or it could be some equal number, like after the 6th one or something like that, you could kick in the requirement of like a landscape island or peninsula per the zoning ordinance, and that would be applicable also on the east side as well, because they have 13 parking spaces run together there. But again, it's one of those trade-off things. If you add parking lot landscaping, where you basically would take out a parking space, we saw earlier that it was deficient in the parking spaces, it would make it actually more deficient. So it's one of those things that a person has to weigh in their mind as far as what's more important to them. Next slide. For number 4 here, again, more landscaping screening. This has to do with interior lot landscaping. The standard is that when you add up all the landscaping for the whole property, the requirement is 20% of the total. I'm estimating it's about at 18%. But frankly, there really isn't any more room to add more. It looks like where they can put it, they've tried to do the landscaping as well as they can. They've done a pretty good job of that. Particularly, they've actually increased what would be required, because the east side, remember, the east side doesn't fit a particular streetscape because it's not against a public road. The streetscape definition, that type A or B or C, that comes in because it's against a public road, which in this case the property has triple frontage with Goodman Road West on the north and then Fountain Lane, both on the west side and the south side of the property. Next slide. Oops. So staff recommends approval of the requested site plan and design for the particular case with the following stipulations, conditions, or changes attached. And these obviously can be augmented or changed per the sentiment of the Planning Commission tonight. Letter A, stipulate or accept whether the 9-foot, 6-inch dumpster height with the roofing is acceptable. B, stipulate or accept whether the proposed dumpster location is acceptable. That's one thing I missed going through it, is that the requirement is that the dumpster location be in the rear of the property. But in this case, where they flipped it from their previous design, the front of the building actually faces to the south. And because it has the triple frontage, as I mentioned earlier, there's really no technical rear to the property. It's triple frontage and then a side, which is the east side. So there's really no technical way for that perfectly to be met, where the dumpster would be in the rear yard portion of the property. C, stipulate or accept whether a flat roof or non-flat roof is acceptable. D, stipulate or accept whether the reveal metal wall panel system as an exterior building material is acceptable. E, stipulate or accept the required off-street parking requirement. F, stipulate or accept the off-street loading requirement. G, clarify to staff satisfaction, terrible time with that word, sorry, the planning issue of the average daily traffic and traffic impact analysis of the proposed land use. Letter H, stipulate or accept the west, south, and north side planting widths. Letter I, stipulate or accept the parking lot landscaping standard. And then J, stipulate or accept the overall interior lot landscaping percentage. That would conclude the presentation unless you'd have any questions.
So does any of the commissioners have questions for Planning Director?
I just wanted to clarify that the actual dumpster shield is 8 feet tall. It's just the shed the storage shed beside it is the 9.5 feet tall.
Okay, yeah, see,
Correct.
that's why I put it up there, because I thought it was 8 foot, but then it had the little building next to it. I don't know how much they're gonna link together as far as their usage.
Okay.
And I didn't know in the past how particular you'd been, so I thought, well, I'll overkill it, you know, and so if you had heartburn on that, so to speak,
Okay.
so, all right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to ask Mr. Barr if he would go back just for a minute to the north side landscaping requirement. Was that 3.5 feet, and was it supposed to be 20 feet or 30 feet?
Well, let's see if I can find that. Thank you for the question, very good question. Here we go. Yeah, for the north side, the streetscape type B, that's the type there, would trigger a width of 25 feet for landscaping, and what's provided is 3.2 feet on that north side.
And do you have any idea why it was set at 25 feet? Is that for some sort of safety or just for the looks of, or the appearance of the property?
I think Commissioner Egner, I think mainly it has to do with just aesthetics, that it would soften the land use that's behind the landscaping, and then having a larger width of that would soften that, whatever that man-made built environment that's behind it. That's my take on that, excuse me.
Okay, and am I looking at the diagram correctly? That part of the area would be for the drive-through to go around that end of the building?
That is correct. The main entry points to the entire property, as I stated earlier, are on the southwest corner and then in the southeast corner. And then the traffic would come up along the east side of the building, which would be on the right-hand side of the slide, which is starts as a double lane, and then it merges on the north side of the building into one, and then you see that following around. And so basically you get a counterclockwise flow to the property. And the applicant is also proposing, I didn't highlight it on the slide, but if you'll see basically northwest of the northwest corner of the building, there's underground like detention for water to be absorbed there, subsurface.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners for our planning director?
I have a question. It's on number E, stipulate or accept the required off-street parking requirement. Are they trying to get off-street parking? I mean, well, I was thinking on-street parking.
Oh, no, very good question, very, very good question. No, basically, when I was talking about the parking earlier, that's all considered off-street parking. None of it would actually be on the streets of either Fountain Lane or Goodman Road.
Okay.
So what we're talking about here is that per the zoning ordinance for the land use, it stipulates a certain amount of parking. So in this case, we had so many spaces for the square footage from the building, and then we have so many from the queuing for the drive-through area. So all this parking would be off-street parking that we'd be talking about.
Okay. And also on D, do we have any pictures of the metal wall panel system? Is that a normal thing that they do?
I think it is a fairly normal system that they use in a lot of their contemporary builds, if you will. So I don't think it's any drastic design change that, from what I can anticipate. The one there in the slide there is just in black and white. They didn't provide it in color, so it's maybe a little harder to see, like the differences in colors and the types of materials that they're using there for those particular facades.
Right, so when would that come up for approval? Because we don't want any wild colors. I know McDonald's didn't use wild colors, but.
Well, this would be during it. I mean, obviously in the minutia there, there's other stuff that they've proposed for colors or whatever. And typically what comes before you, like in a site plan design review, would be things that I feel that aren't technically square or meeting a requirement of the zoning. So the colors that they've proposed seem to meet the city's basically design or color palette, if you will, which is more towards an earth tone type system.
Okay,
Or whatever. Yeah.
okay.
Okay. I have
Yeah,
a question.
Commissioner Bennett.
It's C, stipulate or accept whether flat or non-flat roof is acceptable. And it says here that for buildings less than 10,000 square feet, they want mostly pitch. But if not, a combination of flat roof and pitch is required. But they want a complete flat roof.
Yes, yeah, you can see there from the design, that's a pretty good rendition there, because it's from two different facade angles, both the west and the north, but basically, yeah, they're just showing a flat roof for this particular design submittal.
Any other questions? Okay, and we have the applicant online?
Yes.
All right, does any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, no questions. I have to say that's pretty good. All right, do we have any motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Egger.
I move that after the review of the application, case number 2064, SPDR, a request for the review and proposal site design and landscape plan for the restaurant proposed at 4170 Fountain Lane in Horn Lake for McDonald's restaurant, consisting of 1.03 acres with a PUD zoning, and the Horn Lake Planning Commission approves the request for the following conditions attached A through J, which are items that we just currently discussed.
Okay, and for clarification, are we going to accept a flat roof for letter C? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure that's what it says. Okay. All right, so we got a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Agner,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal, and Commissioner Mercer.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you for the applicant for your time, and we look forward to working with you and for future cases that come before this planning commission. All right, now we're
We
moving.
appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to case number 2066. Request by Janice Willis for conditional use of an event center with liquor and part-time church use at 1426 Nail Road West, Suites A and B, in the DeSoto Commons Planned Unit Development in Horn Lake. And once again, we will hear from our wonderful planning director, Mr. Barr.
You're being very nice tonight, thank you. Yeah, you stated it's case number 2066. I won't duplicate what you've already read very nicely there. Next slide, please. So what we've got here on this slide is from Article 10 from the zoning ordinance. It has to do with different types of applications. In this case, it's conditional uses. I just wanted to highlight here, under item 2 from the zoning ordinance, items A through F, those are the items that were supplied by the applicant, which is very good. And then what you get to basically base your decision, decision to recommend to the governing body on is those 6 factors. So those are important from a land use planning objectivity standpoint. Next slide. So here this slide shows the site plan, and just to state some things from the staff report. Number 1, the proposed area is 1,800 square feet. It would be for suites A and B on this particular address or location. This would be for a new land use. It's not for a new building. The building is existing. So the question is about whether to establish the land use or not as requested. And the zoning is the planned unit development, the PUD of the DeSoto Commons, a portion of the DeSoto Commons area. As you can see from the site plan there, the highlighted area, the south end of the building is highlighted in red, and there are 2 vehicular entrance points along the south side of the property, which would be on the north side off of Nail Road West. Next slide. So I've included here a few field photos, if you can say that real fast, for you, if you're not familiar with the property or didn't have a chance to drive by. So yeah, this particular photo is looking east at the front of the store. I've put in that kind of that yellow line there, it's a vertical line that kind of demarcates. To the right of it would be suites A and B, and to the left of it are the other suites in that particular building. In the background, you see Nail Road West, and then you see parking in front of the store there. Next slide. This slide is it's a picture looking northeast, also kind of at the front of the store. It's basically, I'm standing basically on the sidewalk just off of the Nail Road West road right-of-way or traffic path. You can see the store in the background, but you can see both of the south side entrance points off of Nail Road West here, and then also parking as well. Next slide. This one is looking southeast at the store. I still left in that demarcation, that vertical yellow line. You can see more of the parking. And then Nail Road West is in the background. There's no traffic in this particular slide going down the road, but it is back there. Next slide. So what I've tried to do in those factors, A through F, like we've seen before, I've tried to go through as far as what the applicant has provided, and then when I do each of these cases, I send out 4 referrals to both internal and external entities. And what I mean by that is internal, there'd be other departments of the city, be a fire department, police department, engineering review, that sort of thing, if they have any comments. And then for external, we'll send it out to like the utility companies, if it seems relevant, like the school district. That way, I try to get as many people to look at it beforehand. If they have any comments, make them back to me, and I can incorporate that in the staff report and the PowerPoints. So what we've got here is those 6 factors, lettered A through F. So the first one is substantially increased traffic hazards or congestion. Supplied by the applicant, no congestion or traffic hazards will be affected. So no, we don't get any hard numbers, data, no traffic study from the applicant here, but due to the size, it seems like it would be a fairly small or a smaller type of traffic generator compared to maybe some other land uses. The actual area under application is 1,800 square feet, so that's also kind of a traffic limiter, if you will. I did do some analysis, so because of the request, it falls into the category of two different categories, either places of public assembly or item number 5, institutions, club, lodges, and other public and semi-public buildings, not including hospitals. And so you get a couple of different standards there. So if the public assembly formula is used, the Planning Commission would have to ask the applicant for how many people are intended to be seated and then go from there to see if parking would be adequate. If the formula for institutions, clubs, lodges, et cetera, is used, then since the 1,800 square feet would be the gross leasable area, just divide that by 300, and then you get a requirement of 6 off-street spaces, which would be required per the zoning ordinance. It appears from the site plan, and then just being out there physically from doing the field inspection, there's about 8 to 10 spaces in front of the lease space now. So this could work, if that particular formula is used, that could actually work for this use. Next slide. For letter B, with the requested use, would it substantially increase fire hazards? The applicant stated no substantial increase in fire hazards. A sprinkler system has been installed. And staff is seeing that as a positive thing. It's been confirmed by the fire department that there is it's a recent build as far as the building. It's more of a modern structure, and it does have a sprinkler and alarm system both in it. Now, they may have to do, if it gets approved and they do modifications inside the structure, they may have to do modifications to the sprinkler system itself, but it is there. Going on to letter C, would the request adversely affect the character of the neighborhood? Per the applicant, this is a commercial area that has a gas station and an auto parts and et cetera around the facility. And staff's analysis, it's a positive feature the building is already established, and that there's commercial land uses located south, southwest, west, and northwest of the subject potential lease area. Per the application, approval of liquor sales is done by the Department of Revenue in the state of Mississippi, specifically Alcohol Beverage Control Office. If the conditional use is approved, the applicant would need to obtain one of those from the state when they're applying for a local business license. That would need to be indicated upon the application as well. Staff's opinion is that it would be seen more as compatible if the desired liquor sales would be eliminated. We're just stating that. Next slide. This is a letter D, adversely affect the general welfare of the city. Supplied by the applicant, it will not affect the general welfare of the city. Not a lot of detail there, just a general type question. So, and I did get, I typed the whole thing, I put it both in the staff report and in the PowerPoint that we see here is comments from the Horn Lake Police Department, and I guess they're referencing a previous similar type use. I guess it'll be up to the applicant to determine or maybe add to whether she believes it was a similar use as far as what she's proposing as what this was. But it did create a lot of complaints and calls from police department and fire department. And it did actually was ended after a homicide occurred at that particular other location in town. So the police department felt that if it was going to be like that use, if this was going to be like that use, that it could be too much of a burden or demand on the police department, something that they would rather avoid. And so they were not in favor, and that's the main crux of planning staff being against the use, is basically what had come from the police department. Next slide. Letter E, overtax public utilities or community facilities. Per the applicant, public water is in use. No overtax utilities will be used. Staff, the Horn Lake Water Association Incorporated provides the public water via master meter that goes to the entire building. And according to them, sewer service to the property is provided by the city of Horn Lake via a sewer lift station nearby. So it's a positive feature that the building has both public water and public sewer to it. Staff are not seeing that it really would affect the school facilities. We got nothing back from the school on that. So given the above, there is potential the land use could affect the services the city provides from a police protection. So in my analysis of that, I've got down as, you know, whether this factor is met or not in light of the comprehensive plan. I put not met unless the liquor item is dropped from the application. The applicant can somehow distinguish this proposed land use from similar past uses within the community. Next slide. And then the last one of the comprehensive plan is, would the use be in conflict with the comprehensive plan itself? So what I tried to do is bring out some things from the comprehensive plan that would be applicable to the request. And we've got different things here for future land use. Number 2, general economy. Number 3, transportation. Number 4, community facilities. In this case, because of the uniqueness of the request, there's not a lot in the plan that is really specific to the request. And what I mean by that is that lots of times you'll see the plan come more into play when it's just a bare piece of ground and there's nothing been established. In a way, we already know there's certain commercial uses that are permitted there through the PUD zoning, and so you have to kind of just look at and see if, per the request, if there's something that can be drawn out of the comprehensive plan that either supports the request or it does not. So in staff's opinion, number 4 of the 4 things that are listed there, the community facilities, the community facilities seems to be potentially the one most negatively affected if this use would be similar to that other use that the city had in its history fairly recently. Next slide. I think I just explained that one kind of as far as because it's not, I like to try to find things in the comprehensive plan that are applicable to any request and give it to you guys so you can weigh it in your own mind. It's like, is this met? Is it not met? That sort of thing. In this case, there wasn't a lot that was applicable because the building was already established. So next slide. So staff's recommendation is denial of the request for event center with liquor and part-time church proposed at that 1426 Nail Road West, Suites A and B, within the DeSoto Commons planned unit development consisting of approximately 1,800 square feet that is zoned PUD. This is based upon the following reasoning or basis. Letter A, nonconformance with the city's comprehensive plan, specifically, number 1, adversely affecting the general welfare of the city, and 2, overtaxing or overusing public utilities or community facilities, specifically the city's police department. So that would conclude my presentation. Next slide, excuse me. Thank you. So what I did, because I'm not sure how the Planning Commission wants to recommend on this, I've provided 2 motions, one for basically...
Sorry,
That's all right.
I thought it was turned off.
Basically 2 motions, one for recommending approval to the governing body and the other one is recommending denial. But obviously it's, if you wanted to go with those or change or come up with something else, different conditions, that sort of thing, that's completely up to you guys. So, all right, I rest.
So I'm going to open it up for questions from the commissioners to our planning director.
I'd like to ask you a question. Is there anything, I couldn't find it in the city codes or anything like that, how close you can put liquor to a church?
That's a very good very good question, Mr. Mercer. I don't know if there's anything specific in the city code. There's 40 chapters to the city code that would have to take further analysis. Perhaps that could be done, from tonight until this would go, unless you wanted further study before you actually made a recommendation. between now and when the case would go to the Alderman meeting in mid-March.
I know that some cities have it that you can't have them within 500 feet of a church and a liquor store or where liquor has been sold. But now that they have in liquor in grocery stores, that may have changed some of that, but I couldn't find it anywhere in this plans or in the city codes that there was, you had to have it a certain distance.
Yeah. Staff is not familiar. That doesn't mean it exists or it doesn't exist. We're just not familiar. I wouldn't be able to answer that question tonight.
Well, personally, I'm opposed of having one that close, but I'm a minority.
Any other questions for the? All right, do we have the applicant here? If y'all come to the podium, state y'all's name and address for the record.
Good afternoon to the board, Mr. Barr. My name is Janice Willis. My address is 1533 Swisher Cove, South Haven, Mississippi, and I'm here today with my daughter, Jasmine Edwards.
All right, nice to meet both of y'all. So go ahead and.
Could you get her mic turned up a little bit or something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'll give you. We'll give you a few minutes to kind of let us know what you're wanting to do and how this is going to be used, and then then we'll ask questions if we have any. So.
The facility we're trying to open is a banquet hall, and it is to serve banquets, birthday parties, retirement parties, something that's upscaled and hopefully appeal to the community. We're not looking to open up
a nightclub, so to speak. I know we've been referenced to a nightclub and kind of compared to a nightclub, but we're kind of aiming towards, I would say, the hotel servicing, but servicing the smaller portions. So any businesses that the hotel community kind of do not want to deal with because it's too small. We kind of want to take on those things from business meetings, from pop-up shops, for small businesses. So we're not aiming towards the term or nightclub, so to speak. I think we're kind of differentiated from the last place, especially we're not seen as a liability as they were, because they was having things like Taco Tuesdays and things like that. So I think our location, our hours, and our advertising kind of sets us apart from that previous establishment.
And what are y'all's hours of operation?
Well, we noticed that in one of the motions, they suggested that we do a 7 to 11 or that time frame, which is fine with us. That was more of, I want to be a hands-on owner, so therefore I would be at the facility when it closed. So 11 o'clock is fine with me. I don't want to be out 12, 1 o'clock at night, no way, but. So 7 to 11, preferably the hours that we're trying to get is Friday, Saturdays, and of course, our pop-up shops and stuff will be on Sundays for like the churches and stuff like that. We're not looking to book anything through the week, hopefully, except for one of our church Wednesday night Bible studies. But other than that, we're looking to obey by the city ordinance.
Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
I have a question. You want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
You can.
Commissioner Egner.
So you're not planning on being open every day. You're just planning on being open when somebody books your facility.
Correct.
And there will be a contract signed. We will have everything detailed in contract when they do sign.
So it would be similar to like the things in South Haven, like the Silver Oak Room or was that Southern Elegance and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we will have some bookings during the weekday, maybe, I know we've got some.
Not parties,
but maybe business
Pop-up
meetings, smaller things, or kind of smaller businesses having luncheons, things of that nature, things that, hotels usually don't want to take on because it's just not, a good enough revenue to, even bring out their staff. So we'll, reserve that for the weekdays. So just smaller things for smaller business during the weekdays. Nothing too big, nothing too extravagant during the day type of thing.
I have, Mr. Barr, I thought that you guys are planning to have live music, right?
Now, like I said, what we're opening, trying to, hopefully we open is a banquet hall. If the applicant choose to have a band or a music that night, yes. But as far as we hosting something, even like with a band, it's not us, it's whatever that.
So, I was gonna say, so to clarify, it's similar to like the Red Barn down in Nesbit. I mean, it's basically, you just have a facility open for people that want to utilize it for galas,
birthday parties and
banquets, stuff
yes,
like that, and then
yes.
and then y'all would have contracts with them
Exactly.
for whatever music or
Some may not have, music, or some may, it just depends on
what
the preference is.
Yes.
Well, my next question is, I thought for Horn Lake, with live music, had with the facility that had to be closed down, it is like 10 o'clock? Because I know of the facility that closed down because somebody got shot there, and I thought they would shut the music down at 10 o'clock if it's live music. This is what I'm saying to Mr. Barr, from what I know.
I'm not sure
It
that
was
it's 10
10
o'clock on the
o'clock on the
weekends.
weekends.
Do you know,
That's what I was.
if music has to be shut down at a specific time in the city of Horn Lake? I mean, I know
From
that
what I know, it was 10.
noise can.
I don't know. I'd have to research the city
From what I
code,
know,
see if
it
there's
was
something
10 o'clock.
specific on that. I mean, obviously, you could put a condition that it shut down at a certain time, but if there is a city, if there's a city ordinance on that, let's say
Yes,
you said,
there
oh,
is.
you could go to 11, but the city standard is 10, well, then the city standard would control, not necessarily the condition that you placed on it or whatever. But that'd be something I'd just have to research to see if what's there or not, and if what's there, what specificity it says.
Any other questions?
I'd like to ask you a question. With regard to the fire code, apparently there might be some interior redesign, and you might have to rework the sprinkler system or whatever. During that interaction with the fire marshal, did he indicate how many people you can have in there during an event with 1,800 square feet?
He have not. There will be some modification done inside the building, and at that time, we will, get the fire marshal out there to go over that. But from what I'm looking at and for what the facility, I think it's anywhere from 75 to 100, but my contract would not say 100.
Are you planning on having tables in there?
Yes, sir.
And how many tables do you plan on purchasing?
That's the scary part.
Expensive part.
That's the expensive part, yes. I'm planning in my head to have, if it's round tables, we're gonna do 12 round tables. That'll be 6 on each side. We'll give the middle down. Maybe purchasing 3 long tables, and that's just for serving your dinner, your luncheon or whatever on.
And are you going to seat 10 people at a table or 12? 8. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can you describe what you mean by pop-ups?
You want me to go? So I'm involved very much so with a small business, with both of us kind of having a small business. I'm starting a yard car business, and her owning a mobile detailing business previously. In our community, we have a lot of individuals. I would say I'm so used to going to flea markets. So it's kind of like a flea market for small businesses where we would advertise. A small business owner would have a booth, and we would have people come by and kind of get cards or get services, or kind of sample their products per se.
Okay.
Well, that leads me to another question. So you're going to have a pop-up in there, which may be a variety of people promoting their business.
Small business, yes.
Are y'all going to be running the bar open at that time?
No.
Okay.
We won't initially have a bar. We're not.
Yeah, we won't have a bar initially, set up in there for,
We're not selling liquor.
nothing like that. It's just, but there will be a spot where if the applicant come in, they want to set up and serve, like champagne or mixed drinks or, you know,
And that
they'll have
goes-
it'll be a spot to where they can do that if they want, you know.
And that goes to show the type of audience we're actually targeting. We're not actually gonna hire a bartender for our retirement parties and
so-
things of that nature.
So if I contract your place for a event and I bring in all my own liquor, you have to have a liquor license?
That's what
From our understanding.
that's what I don't, that's the part that I need to get understanding on, because to my understanding that I would have to get a liquor license if I'm gonna be in the building selling it, correct?
Yes.
But I'm not. So the thing that we're doing is, which I have to get a clarification on that because Mr. Barr kind of threw me off in this about I have to get a liquor license. So that's something that I need to get understanding on, because it's not like I'm gonna be in there with them selling liquor to them, not that. If they wanna bring in their own liquor or wine or whatever, that's on them. I'm not providing anything for them.
Just the meeting space
Just the meeting
Just
space.
in the tables.
And the tables.
and the tables, yes, and, okay.
So,
Yeah,
so
if
Mr.
it's-
Oh,
If
go ahead.
Mississippi is anything like Tennessee, they will have to bring it in, and then they will have to pay like a portion of the insurance. They'll
Yes.
have to be bonded and all that good stuff.
Yes, I would, yeah.
And I do have the ordinance from Horn Lake.
Okay.
It's section 4:2, retail sale of beer or light wine, which, to his question about the distance from a church, it says if the permits for off-premises consumption to sell or give away beer or wine, 7 a.m. or after 1 a.m. daily. If the permit is for on-premises consumption, which sounds like what kind of license you need, to sell, give, dispense, or permit to be consumed in or upon the premises any beer, light wine, Monday through Saturday before 10 a.m. or after 12 midnight the following day, and on Sunday before 11 a.m. or after 11 p.m. So it sounds like, the hours that you're going to be, it would be okay for the Friday and Saturday.
Thank you.
But I'm glad to hear that you're not going to sell it.
No.
And I hope you get a good
Insurance.
attorney to do your contract so you're not held liable
Yes, ma'am. We have.
for anything.
Thank you.
You're having all these parties and everything that people come and ask you to provide space for them. Why is it, where's your church come in?
Well, I
Do you
have,
have a pastor, or what hours are you going to have a church?
it's not our church. There's certain churches, certain small churches that doesn't have somewhere to have their
Or designated location.
location. So therefore, we will they can use our location, like on Sundays from whatever time, 7 a.m. to 10, 11, whatever time their church starts or whatever. And on Wednesday night, they do Bible study. So my facility would be open for them to do that.
So we will print out
A separate
A contract.
contract for that particular
so they
thing.
will only rent probably 2 days out of a
A week or something like that.
I do have a
Kind of
question.
like that one at the middle school.
Yeah, I was gonna say that just.
I do have a question for you. If you're, let's say you do book out your banquet Saturday night, it's gonna go on for a while. Are you gonna stay there till 12 midnight, 2 a.m. and get it cleaned up for church 7 a.m. Sunday?
Yes, that's why,
We
That's-
both live within 10 miles
Yeah.
of the facility, so we're very much close.
to the facility. That's the purpose of us saying we're good with the 7 to 11, because we can come in there at 10:45, 11 o'clock whenever they leave and clean up for the church and set them up for the next day.
And if you do round tables, how's the church gonna be set up? If you're setting it up for a banquet, or you're just gonna use it, is it a church gonna look like a banquet as well?
No, sir, we have chairs. We don't have the chairs.
So you move the
It
round
depends-
tables?
Yeah, we move the round tables. We break them down. We have a storage
space,
space.
so we can pack up the
pack the
chairs.
chairs and, well, most of the chairs, because they're gonna use most of them.
What-
Yeah, we pack up the tables, put them in the storage room, and set the chairs out in rows.
You'll be busy.
Oh, yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
No, but I know this is a public hearing.
No, I was just asking. Okay, so, thank y'all. Y'all can,
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
all right, this is a public hearing. We are gonna open it up to the public. Would anybody like to speak for the public? All right. Yes, sir, come on up. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Francis J. Miller, Ward 5 of the City of Horn Lake, voting citizen, 13 years, active citizen, go to every planning commission meeting, alderman meeting, and churches. Now, I have a question for the planning director. I thought a liquor store could not operate in X amount of feet from a church, school, or public office. Is that true or false?
I don't know.
I suggest you check it. They cannot. So how can a liquor store operate in a church when it can't even be beside a church? And if a church is a church, one day a year, it's a church. So I suggest this applicant either apply for conditional use for a liquor store or conditional use for a church. You can't put the two together. My opinion, and I've been in DeSoto County 34 years, 21 years in South Haven, 13 in Horn Lake. I actively served on the chamber in South Haven and in Horn Lake, and actively involved in Christ the King Catholic Church since I've been in DeSoto County. And you can't put a liquor store by a church or in a church. My opinion as a citizen, Francis J. Miller.
Hey, Mr. Miller, can I ask you a question? You had made a statement that a church is a church if it even for a day. So is the school at is the Horn Lake Middle School, is it a church or a school? Because they do have church services.
Okay.
Not anymore, but
If there's a school, it's a school. If it's a church, it's a church.
But they have both.
yes.
Church or school?
They have church services on Sundays and they have school Monday through Friday. I was just curious what your definition would be on that one.
In the
Okay,
main hall.
my opinion, I have no problem with churches or schools being beside themselves, and I don't know of any ordinance anywhere that a school can't be beside a church or a church can't be beside a school.
What about in the school? The church is using the gym of the
I have no knowledge of any ordinance that a church can't be in a school or a school can't be in a church. But I do know you can't have a liquor store in a school or a church or vice versa. So you got any other questions?
Oh, I just
Yes.
wanted to, oh, go ahead.
I have a
did.
Did I answer it? Did you hear what I
got your
said?
answer. So
Mr.
now-
Miller, but it's not a liquor store per se. It's an
Selling
event
liquor
center.
then.
It's a, they're
I'll
not
reward
selling liquor. They're not gonna sell liquor. They're hosting.
Okay.
They're not selling liquor.
You
So I
can't
think it's different.
give away liquor in a school or a church or a public building either. You can't give it away.
The building is not a designated church. It would be just renting the property and using the property. So I think there's a big distinction there.
There is a big distinction.
I would think. If it's a church, it would be like Christ the King. You're renting a building to use it to host a service. I think that's a big distinction.
And also on that ordinance, I didn't read the next section. It's number 3, it's unlawful to sell or store beer or wine within 400 feet of any church, school, kindergarten, or funeral home. However, if the permitted retailer is located within an area zoned commercial, such minimum distance shall not be less than 100 feet. The distance shall be measured from the actual location of the business to the building housing the church, school, kindergarten, or funeral home. She is not selling the liquor. From what I understand, she will be getting a license to permit the occupants to bring in for their parties, but not to sell.
Can I have the applicant back up? Just wanted. So I just wanted to get some clarification since we're up here. So y'all are not storing any alcohol, y'all are not serving any alcohol on the premises, y'all selves?
No, no sales, no
There would, so
storage.
at the end of the night, there would be no beer, no alcohol, anything stored. It would all be go with whatever client. So when the church is there, there would be no alcohol.
Correct.
All right, is there any other, does anybody have any questions? I just wanted to clarify that.
And they'll be responsible, should the police or anyone comes in to
They would be responsible.
check that, okay.
Yes.
Mr.
In
Mr.
your
Barr,
services, in your building, which is going to be your highest potential of making a living out of that building? Serving the banquets or providing for church?
Pretty much serving the banquets.
Why don't you just drop the church off of it and not even use it and just go with the banquets and just make it plain and simple?
If,
We haven't established a contract with a church.
yet,
We
so-
don't have anything set in stone with a church. It is not a for sure usage of our facility. We were just stating that it is an option, just like one of the pop-up shops or the museum displays or things of that nature. We are not set on being a church or an establishment for a church.
They would be hosting the church just like they're hosting a banquet.
right, if.
You
if-
wanna rent the space for a
Right,
party, you
if-
rent it. You
if,
wanna
you
rent
know,
it to keep a service, you rent it.
If a church or something get flooded out or,
It's just business.
you know, something happens to the church, they need
Yeah.
somewhere to have their, you know, services, we're open to that.
And I think we're broadening our horizon and not just focusing on retirement parties or receptions or baby showers, things of that nature, because I think those type of events are geared towards certain hours and certain days. Like I said, we do want to host events, some events during the weekdays and some events during the mornings. So I think the events that I just mentioned, like baby showers or receptions or retirement parties, are geared towards Saturdays and Sunday nights. We are open, you know, Fridays and Saturdays, so we're kind of broadening our horizons to appeal to those times as well.
Okay, thank you.
And that is by contract only and not just open the doors
No,
for
they would have
anybody
to
to
sign
come
a
in.
But the
Contract,
church
yes.
will be an event hosting their service that.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, and one more clarification. The people that you host, they're also not gonna be allowed to sell liquor, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
That would be in the contract also.
okay.
Right,
Mr.
thank you.
Mr. Barr, did you?
Oh, go ahead. Y'all can sit down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you read what the chief of police said, or was that just for us to see?
No, that was exactly what he sent to me, and I typed it in verbatim.
I know, but did you read it out loud?
No, I haven't. I can if the.
No, I don't,
commission-
you don't have to. I was
One
just,
sec,
Oh,
before
okay.
you do that. I think maybe the chief of police was under the assumption that maybe they were gonna sell liquor. That's what I'm reading from.
That's what I was under.
That's-
You know,
Right.
but this is now a different scenario where they're not gonna be selling liquor. So I think, you know,
Okay, do we have any other people, members of? Yes, sir, go ahead and come up and state your name and address, please.
Is Mike working okay?
Yeah.
Brian Moore, 3223 Grand Oaks Drive, Hernando. I just want to clear this up. Not that I'm smart or anyone, but it happened to me. I own a liquor store, and a church moved in next to me. And I wanted to change my business to an LLC, and I had to get a waiver from the church. So you can have a liquor store or anything else within proximity of a church if the church will sign a waiver. In their case, they'd be signing their own waiver. So I don't see any problem there.
Thank you, sir. Any other people from the public? All right, the public hearing is closed. Do we have any other discussion from the commissioners? Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move after review of the application of number 2066, conditional use, a request for an event center with liquor and part-time church land use proposed to be located at 1426 Nail Road West, Suite A and B, with the DeSoto Commons planned unit development consisting of approximately 1,800 square feet that is zoned PUD under Horn Lake Planning Commission be approved of the request for the City Board of Aldermen for the following conditions attached to it. And those conditions, A, B, and C, they must get their liquor license. Their hours of operation will be 11 to 7 unless otherwise stated by some city ordinance, and all federal, state, and county city requirements be met.
I have
And then-
one clarification.
Okay,
One
yeah, go ahead, clarify.
Research what type of license you would need for liquor on premises. And also, if we could add D, where no liquor is sold by anybody on the premises.
Yes.
It's just a part of the event.
Would you like to accept those changes?
I will accept those changes.
All right, do we
second.
have a second?
Second.
Second from from Commissioner Vidal. Any other discussion? All right, roll call.
Commissioner Yeager,
No.
Commissioner Agner,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Mercer,
No.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Vidal.
Yes.
So the
It's
motion passes.
4 in favor and 2 opposed.
All right, thank y'all. So when will they need to go in front of the alderman? That'd be on the
Be on the March 15th?
15th?
Yes.
Thank you, ladies. All right, we're going to move on to our next item, which is case number 2074. And I lost my agenda, so now I got to see. Oh, there we go. Request by Wilson Development owner Blake Mindrop Engineering Resource LLC, engineer for one lot light industrial subdivision final plat called the Nail Road Industrial Park at Horn Lake, consisting of approximately 4.9 acres, plus or minus, located east of the US Highway 51 North at approximately 1100 Nail Road West in Horn Lake. The address to be assigned. And we're going to let our planning director, Mr. Barr, take this one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't reread the slide that's up there. Basically, it just reiterates what you've already nicely stated. So next slide, please. So what I've got here is, these are keynotes from the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regulations. Excuse me, from the zoning ordinance about subdivisions. And so you have the title and purpose, you have the definitions. In this case, this qualifies as a minor subdivision since there's no proposed extension of city services or no new public road, that sort of thing. So it's a it's a minor subdivision. And so what we've done, we've skipped through the sketch plat. That's one step staff could have made the applicant go through sketch plat. But in this case, this is a final plat. We've skipped right to the final plat stage. So that's what's before you this evening. Next slide. There's just more continuation there on that slide. There's actually 5 parts, if you will, to the definition of a minor subdivision. Next slide. So this slide is from Article 2, the platting of subdivisions. It talks about the procedure for recording a final plat. Next slide. So now here we get into these slides, which actually lay out the proposed plat. It's just proposed as one lot of basically 4.9 acres. There's no floodplain, no 100-year floodplain at play, so that's a positive feature. Water is the supplier is the Horn Lake Water Association. Sewer is also Horn Lake Water Association. The zoning is the planned unit development, the PUD. It's part of the DeSoto Commons PUD. Next slide. So this is from the staff report, excuse me, section 34-32. The vicinity map down there, I don't know, maybe this is too picky or whatever, but it just shows in the vicinity map, it just labels Interstate 69, but it's also a route of Interstate 55. So I've just put that as a comment for a correction, if they could clarify that in the vicinity map. And then also way up there under labeled number 1 on the slide, it's hard to read from the slide, but it actually states it's Township 1 North, but that can't be correct. This would be Township 1 South, so that would be a needed correction there. Next slide. This has to do with section 34-58 as far as easements. On the plat itself, it doesn't really show any utility easements, but that is a requirement of the subdivision regulations. That there'd be so much width, and that would be basically on each property line, each boundary property line. Let me go to my own slides here because I can see it better in my own notes. Yeah, from the plat, it just shows in the front there, on the slide there, I've kind of tried to highlight it in like a brown color, because the plat's bounded in the blue outline, and so what I've tried to do is kind of show what's on the plat is something they've labeled as an infrastructure easement of 10 feet of width along the front of the property. So I've tried to mark that on that particular slide. Next slide. This comes from section 34-62, which deals with general suitability of a plat. And basically, it's almost kind of like something of like a land use planning factor, if you will, in the subdivision regulations. It's kind of like a double check, if you will, to see if, as far as what's proposed is keeping with the general character of the development of the area. And so I'm just commenting that most of the DeSoto Commons PUD has not developed in the 20 years since it's been recorded, but there is a commercial office land use directly north, and it's what's proposed on this particular lot is 6 light industrial type buildings ranging from about 6,000 to 9,500 square feet in area. So at least to staff's opinion, it seems it would be fitting with the area, even though a lot of the area is not developed. But when you consider the rest of the PUD that exists, it could be a very good fit. Should be a good fit. Okay, next slide. So what I've tried to do here, this is also from the staff report, section 34-89. This deals with minimum standards. On this particular slide, it has to do with D, which is drainage, and E is sidewalks. There's a note on there. I've highlighted it. It's number 4 that deals with the, it basically says that the lot shall be graded. So basically the water would flow to a driveway or a drainage channel or a public road or something like that. Staff's comment on this was just to delete note number 4. But that the applicant and the developer should submit drainage and grading construction plans that would be reviewed by the city engineer for approval. And as far as sidewalks, none were proposed, but I learned from the applicant today that there's already a sidewalk there on the north side, and staff was not aware of that. So correction noted. Next slide. Okay, this still has to do with the same section 34-89. This has to do with more minimum standards, the letters F, which has to do with water supply, and G, which is sanitary sewer system. just the standards from F is that all subdivisions shall have proposed public systems, basically, for both water and sewer. And then there's a general note from the plat to that effect, which is contained in note number 2. So the thing that's a mystery to staff, because the sketch plat step was skipped, is the exact locations of the water, or excuse me, the utility lines. So the applicant is present, so maybe that'd be a question for them tonight, if they could give any kind of detail on that. The city legal staff recommended that there be a public dedication language somewhere within the note number 2, or somewhere else on the plat itself. Next slide. This deals with minimum standards again, but item K, as far as erosion and sediment control. The standard is that installation of the above improvements shall be done in a manner as to provide for the most effective control of erosion and sediment. There was nothing that we could see that as far as a note or anything were on the plat, either on page 1 or page 2, that was stated. So staff would recommend that some wording be placed to that effect. Next slide. So staff recommends, an approval to the Board of Aldermen for case 2074, subdivision final plat for the requested subdivision final plat of the Nail Road Industrial Park at Horn Lake. It's a one lot light industrial plat consisting of 4.9 acres plus or minus, with the following conditions attached to it. A, update the vicinity map to include Interstate 55. This item B, I didn't go into detail with this, it was on one of the earlier slides. As far as the title portion of the subdivision, I had suggested adding like a Tennessee, Mississippi baseline portion to the title and the Chickasaw name to the Meridian portion, but I guess according to Mississippi law, survey law or whatever, that's not necessarily that we include the specific name of the baseline or the specific meridian from which the survey is derived on the plat. So, but I would recommend still with B, the second sentence there, change the north to south in the title, because that would be accurate. Item C, add utility easements to plat per the subdivision regulation standards. Now the conditions I'm doing here, they're probably going to be different from your site plan because of stuff that staff learned just in the last couple days or whatever. So if it doesn't read word for word, that's because it's different. So item D, delete note number 4 about drainage construction plans shall be submitted for city review and approval. Item E, add a sidewalk. Oh, E's been taken care of. I learned that as of today. Item F, state or list the public water and sewer suppliers to the subdivision on the plat. Add dedication language about easements to note number 2. And then item G, add a note, the subdivision and development will meet the city's requirements for erosion and sediment control. Next slide. So that just leads to the recommended motion, which this is built mainly from that previous slide. I guess the changes there, as noted, with item B. So, yeah. That's all I have. Unless you have any questions.
Does any of the commissioners have a question for Mr. Barr?
I do, Mr. Barr. Didn't we already approve this warehouse on the north side and the south side? We just talked about this a couple months ago. We had one warehouse on the north side of Nail Extended and then one on the south side. And we approved it.
If I remember from my research, that I don't think it's been approved. So that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay.
So it might have went through you before, but I don't know if it was actually went through without me looking in my notes, detail or whatever, where it actually went through all the steps to get the final approval or whatever. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Barr? All right, do we have the applicants here? If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
Austin Wilson, 3242 West Heartland Drive, South Haven, Mississippi.
Thank you. All right, so if you have any, if you'd like to go ahead and just let us know what your plans are, and if you've heard all the concerns that the staff has had, if you can just address some of those for the commissioners, please.
Sure. We've been working with Chad and our engineer, Blake Mendrop. He's not able to be here tonight. He had a prior commitment. So kind of our plans for the name of the development too is going to be Market 55 Industrial Campus. So kind of our plans, just briefly to go over, you know, I know you guys, the commission's familiar with Core 55 on the east side there of Nail, and then you got the other big box on the northwest corner of 51 and Nail. So we're kind of that corridor in between. So this has been a vacant piece of land for well over 20 years, I believe, and we bought the land from the city. And so we're proposing a really beautiful corridor of an industrial campus in between those two big boxes. So our potential tenant could be any commercial use, any light industrial use. It's kind of a flex space tenant. So that's kind of what our thoughts are on that. We're going to be back before you guys next, just to kind of jump ahead a little bit. We're going to be back before you guys on your next meeting to talk about our plans. As far as architecturally, we've spent a lot of time with our architect. We're going to be proposing some metal architecture. We've talked a lot about that with Chad. Just to kind of preface some of what we're going to be talking about, metal architecture in the past 20 years has really come a long way, and it's not thought of in today's world like it was 20 years ago. There's been a lot of updating. It's in most cases a lot more economical now to stick build and brick the buildings, but this is not a financial cop-out. This is something that we're really trying to do to enhance this area. It's going to be a beautiful corridor in between the two big boxes. So I believe we have approved commercial uses as well as light industrial. I think that may be what you were referring to that we've been through here. So anyways, that's kind of our vision.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
Just not really jumping ahead, but do you plan on building on the south side as well?
We do, yes.
Okay.
It's I believe 27 acres total on the north and south side there, yeah.
So you're not losing your mind?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
You said it's flex space, so does that include industrial, retail, office, just whatever?
It could. I believe we've been approved for commercial and light industrial uses, so. Okay. Yes, ma'am. We've actually even been in discussions and communication with a Fortune 500 company that is looking to relocate out of Memphis too, so as a potential tenant for us. And we're gonna own this. We're not selling lots. We're gonna lease the property, so it's gonna be kept up and well done.
Any other questions? All right. Do we have a motion?
I have a motion. After review of the application case number 2074 SDFP, a request for a one-lot light industrial subdivision final plat called the Nail Road Industrial Park, which is now the Market 15 Industrial.
55, yes, ma'am.
Consisting of 4.9 acres plus or minus, the Horn Lake Planning Commission recommends approval of the request to the Board of Aldermen with the following conditions attached to it. And I would say conditions A through G as updated today.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Yeager,
Yes.
Commissioner Agner,
Yes.
Commissioner McGann, yes. Commissioner Mercer,
Yes.
Commissioner Little,
Yes.
and Commissioner Vidal.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so that concludes the new business. We are going to move next to other business for updates on land use items, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Barr since this is his time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, under the other items, other business items or whatever, A1 there, you're probably aware Oh, you're probably aware by now of the passage of Senate Bill 2095, which is the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act. And so some features of that, it lets jurisdictions throughout the state, whether it be city or a county, to either opt in or opt out of participating. Now, if a jurisdiction opts in, they can't opt out later. But if they opt out now, they have basically 90 days once this was enacted, which was the February 2nd date earlier this month. They have 90 days, they can opt out. If they, at a later date, they can opt in, or they could be forced in if there's a ballot initiative. There is a provision in there that I think it states if they get 1,500 signatures signed by people, registered voters within the jurisdiction, then that could put it on the ballot, and then it would go to as basically a ballot initiative. And then if it passed through that, then that would force the jurisdiction in participation into the act, if you will. So, so there's basically, from a land use standpoint, there's potentially, I'm just going to come from the standpoint that, you know, the city could opt in, or whether, regardless of whether it opts in or out or whatever. There's three aspects to the land use aspects. There's the cultivation of the use, there's the processing of the product, and then there's the actual dispensaries. You're probably more visually aware of the dispensary use. Lots of times cultivation will be in a rural area, but not always. Sometimes it can be in a city or something like that, in a developed area, urban area. So those are the three components or aspects of the land use, if you will. And then the state law, it has some distance requirements. I don't have those in there, and I don't have them on the top of my head, but there are some distance requirements, like if you're doing like a dispensary use within that jurisdiction. So let's say the city would opt in at some point or be forced in through a ballot initiative, then there would be distances from like a dispensary from other like public uses, whether it be like a religious use or whether it be a residential use or things of that nature. I believe it's set at 1,000 feet, but it gives each of those uses, I think, a chance to waiver out down to 500. So let's say dispensary wants to go in at a certain place. You know, it's checked for some of these land uses for that 1,000 feet, but if, let's say, one of them that's on the list is less than that, then the dispensary could go to that particular property owner and see if they wanted to opt out, or not opt out, but go down to basically 500 feet, as long as they were still at least 500 feet. So that's my understanding. That's kind of a feature of the bill. So we'll see what the city wants to do. I just wanted to kind of bring it. You probably maybe have heard of its passage or whatever, but so now obviously if the city opts in, and then it has to decide if it wants to opt in at all three phases, those aspects, those land use aspects that I just mentioned, or just one of them or two of them or something like that. So that obviously that'll be discussion in the city for some time, I think. But I just kind of wanted to put it out there on your radar that obviously if the city opts in, that'll require amendments to the zoning ordinance or whatever. Obviously it would have to be at least the minimum of the state law. And then in some cases, if the city wanted to do some different things or whatever, they could do that. But that's about all I'm prepared to say on it tonight. It's something that could be coming later this year that would affect basically amendments to the zoning ordinance, which you would get to consider on as text amendments, and then recommend to the governing body. So,
thank you, sir.
Now going on to A2, the comprehensive plan update. I've reached out to Mr. Barber. His firm is under contract with the city to update the comprehensive plan that was basically postponed last year due to lacking of staff with the city. And so I've reached out to Mr. Barber to kind of do basically investigate where we could start with that. So I just wanted to put it up there. That's something that will probably take up a fair amount of time off and on over the next 12 to 18 months, I'm guessing. Sometimes I think, this is just a thought, I was going to throw out as a thought. I don't know I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts or your opinions that where we bring these site plans to you, there's a lot of details, there's a lot of minutia. I don't try not to bring everything to you, but I try to bring, to me, what's on the books is that was enacted in the zoning ordinance by past alderman boards, and try to be real respectful of, whether it be a landscape standard or a parking standard or a particular design standard. To me, it's all important. So that's why I try to go through it and be very thorough with it. But sometimes I wonder if the planning commission would rather not deal with that and then deal more with just more larger concept planning issues, because we'll see that at play in the comprehensive plan update. Because I know I've worked in other jurisdictions that, like the site plan design review, it wouldn't even come to the planning commission. It was all done administratively by staff. We'd go through it. If it's met, it's met. If it's not met, we tell that back to the applicant, and they have to plan accordingly or whatever. The only time it would then become to the planning commission or whatever is, let's say there would be let's say a dispute between staff, or like an interpretation, and then it could be like an appeal. It could be an appeal that come to you, but I'm just kind of putting that out there as something to think. I don't know what your sentiment, if you guys like being in the site plan design review, those types of cases or not. But I'm just thinking that with the comprehensive plan, there's a lot more like bigger planning concepts at play. Because I'm envisioning that there'll be planning meetings around town, different geographies, different facilities or whatever, where people will be invited to come in and make comments, and then they'll make comments, and those comments can be prioritized, and that'll help formulate land use policy that becomes a part of the plan. So that's just kind of something I'm just stating or whatever, that'll be coming to you more as the year progresses, the comprehensive plan update.
Okay.
Let's see, A3, planning department staffing. It's on the alderman agenda for tomorrow night to hire an intern. I believe it's out of the University of Memphis in their planning department up there. Which, if they do that, that'll be a welcome addition to the staff, because we've been very busy, and a lot of this detailed review takes a lot of time. And so we're hoping that they will approve that tomorrow night. And if they do, then that person could start later in March. And so obviously there'll be some training involved, and there'll be a person that would help our office manager, Tammy, and then helping myself as well, doing various office tasks and get more coverage at the front counter, and then also to help with various tasks that we have, whether it be planning related, filing, different stuff. So we're excited about that.
That's good. That means we're growing.
Yes, the city is growing. It's growing in all aspects, really. It's residential. It's growing commercially. It's growing, light industrial. There's really no area that's absent. It's basically, as we've seen the different cases that have been before you the last, couple meetings or whatever. There's development occurring of every nature. It's not just this, or it's not just that, or whatever, because sometimes you'll see that depending on the community, but that's not the case here, so that's very nice. The last thing is item A4, and I guess the city passed, it must have been about the middle of November of last year. It was an ordinance that dealt with processing or handling something called small cell technology. It was very thorough. It was done very well, but it creates a huge administrative burden on staff. Because basically, just to state the analogy, it would be like if someone wants to put a utility pole, we would be bringing a case before you for a conditional use permit each and every time for every pole. And then that would go to the alderman for each and every pole. And so this small cell technology, it's DAS for short, DAS, digital antenna systems. And what they are, they've been around for about 10 or 12 years, if I remember correctly. But they're just small, like utility pole scale structures that get placed at various points around an area. And what they're used for is they're used to augment cellular wireless systems. So yeah, obviously you're probably well familiar with the big, large towers, and they have all the antennas at the top. I mean, when those are placed and when those are built, that's a major thing because they're really tall. You could be seen for, you know, in some cases miles or whatever, but they carry a lot of data. And so there's such a need for more, basically, I don't know if it's broadcasting or receiving, or maybe it's both or whatever, but with these digital antenna systems on these utility poles, they're used to help augment communications, if you will, without having to build another big tower. So they go around various locations where they have high demand. The companies determine where that high demand is, and then they want to put in a pole. But the system that's been created is that each one of these would need a conditional use permit, and then there's another 18 things that would have to meet. And so I'm actually just scratching my head trying to build the building permit template, because our building permit template doesn't have 18 parts to it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the aldermen to revisit at the March meeting, the March 15th meeting, if they would revisit, basically open this back up. And what I've got instead in mind is something that would be done administratively, that could be done administratively, where we get, because we've already been approached by companies that want to erect these structures throughout town. You know, whether that means 2 or 200, I don't know, or whatever, but I don't really want to process, you know, 24 conditional use permits for utility poles. We don't do it for electrical poles. We don't do it for other telephone poles. It's just, that's what's been created. So it was a really good effort, but I think it was just a little off its mark or whatever. So I'm going to ask them if they would initiate basically a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, and then we can process that, and then that would be coming before you at a later date that you could look at and decide on as far as the facts and such.
So for reference, is this like one of the poles that on Pleasant Hill, as you go from Goodman to, not Goodman, but Church to Goodman, there's one on like the west side of Pleasant Hill Road. It's like a great big, almost like a utility pole, but it's black and it has like some kind of meter on it.
I'm not familiar, that's a good question, Commissioner Little. I'm not familiar with that particular corner of the intersection. I'll have to look and see what it is or not. Normally these would be probably somewhere in the 20 to probably 35 or 40 feet in height. And it would look like a standard pole, but then towards the top they would widen a little bit.
That must be what it is.
So I'm guessing that it might be.
I can't identify it. I don't know what it is. So
that might be the best indicator. If you can't put it into some known classification, then it might be that.
Right.
You know, so, but I don't know what I'll have to look myself. And so, but yeah, the idea there is that I just reopen it up to be revisited. I think with just a few amendments to the zoning ordinance, that this can be then done administratively. And so when someone comes in, we can still run it through review. It still gets reviewed by staff, probably send it over to Public Works, send it over to the engineer to see if there's a few things that need to be checked. But we can go through a short list of whether it is or isn't. And if it is, then they can you know, pay their fee, and we can issue the permit and be done with it, as opposed to going through conditional use permit on each one. So.
Will these poles be on the roadway, like regular light poles, something like that? On property?
Excuse me. It's some of the digital antenna systems. Sometimes they'll actually be installed inside buildings, existing buildings. Other times they'll be exterior, outside, and they'll be either put on the outside of buildings, or they'll be put on other, like you're suggesting, other utility poles. Of course, they always have to get like structural analysis, because whenever you add a weight or a mass on a pole, you want to make sure it doesn't blow over, or if it's not affected by ice and that sort of thing. So there's some engineering behind that they do, even with the smaller scale poles.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you for that report.
Yes, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Not yet.
Okay, you got something to say?
Looking at the calendar, and I know this is a ways in the future, we have a conflict on May the 30th meeting. That's Memorial Day. So I know we have to give some kind of notice. So I just wanted to bring that to attention.
So then we probably need to, we probably need to make a decision on that probably sooner than later about trying to move that meeting to the 23rd, which would be that Monday prior, would it not?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion? And then that way we can put that in the paper starting when we need to? Yes, sir.
Staff would lobby for maybe the day after, but, well, that's a Tuesday. Well, that's a Tuesday. It wouldn't be the Alderman meeting because that'd be the 31st of May.
Well, we could do that. So-
Because the last time that the planning commission shortened the calendar, we ran into some legal notification issues with some of the cases or whatever. We weren't actually able to meet the deadline.
Okay.
So I would rather, but of course, I don't know any of your individual schedules as whether the next day, the 31st, the Tuesday would be amenable to you at all, but staff would suggest moving it back a day as opposed to moving it ahead a week.
Okay, so how about we just, why don't we give it, we could give it consideration and look at that at the end of March and then figure out what we need to do for May, so we can do that.
Yes.
That would be the best. I gotta look at my schedule for a Tuesday. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Anybody? Okay, we got a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed the same. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Everything back in the pockets.
Christine doing?
Yeah.